Origin Chance, and this is Taxi to the Front, the first battle of the Marne, the Great War, Week 7 by the channel The Great War. The German army is so close to Paris that French soldiers are brought to the front by taxis. Damn. Together with the British expeditionary forces, the French are fighting the German advance near the Marne River. Oh, okay, near the Paris, I guess. Meanwhile, the Austro-Hungarian army is retreating to the Carpathian Mountains after a catastrophic defeat against Russians with hundreds of thousands of casualties. Yeah, last video at week 7 we saw that, right? Basically, Russians went against the Germans and Germany had the upper hand because they're so powerful. Then Russians went against the Austro-Hungarians and Austro-Hungarians got their ass kicked, I guess. Because, you know, Hotzendorfer is that general's name because he's really effed up, right? That's the theme I've seen from the start of this series. Like, that guy just sucks. So, yeah, in this, I guess we're going to see more battle from, I guess, Russia and Germany, right? Because Austro-Hungarian just retreated and, you know, battle at, Paris, right? The Schlieffen-Plan trying to take Paris. I guess we'll see that. So, yeah, let's watch this one.
The first 5 weeks of the war have seen great offensives by Germany, Russia, and Austria-Hungary, larger than any military operations in history. Hundreds of thousands of men have died, but today, all of those offensives come to an end. I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to the Great War. At the beginning of the week, the French and the British were regrouping around Paris as the Germans advanced. The Germans were also advancing in the east, hoping to push the Russians back to Russia, while further south, it was the Russians advancing to push the Austrians back toward their own empire. 2 weeks ago, a Russian army had been absolutely destroyed at the Battle of Tannenberg, and though the Germans had been trying to press their advantage, there hadn't been a major battle since then. That changed this week. On the morning of September 9th, the German army, bolstered by troop arrivals from the front in France, attacked the Russians and once again simply crushed them at the Masurian Lakes, and the Russian army only escaped complete and total destruction by the remarkable speed of its retreat from the lakes, moving 40 kilometers a day to leave the Germans far behind. These two battles, especially...
Yeah, the tactics went like this. Run for your lives! And everybody just, ran 40 kilometers a day.
Especially Tannenberg, were truly historical victories, and they pushed all Russian troops off of German soil. They also destroyed Russian numerical superiority over the Germans for the time being. Now, Russia would still have a strong presence just across the border, but the Germans were no longer worried about being steamrolled by the endless Russian army. Here's a little anecdote from the retreat. Now, some Russian soldiers were trying to take a statue of Bismarck from a town in East Prussia to bring home, but their commander told them not to take it because he did not want there to be an international incident. Now, the Russian people as a whole...
But they are at war. What more incident can there be? I guess they still fear, German might basically, get angry and wipe us out or something.
Might have been totally demoralized by the catastrophic defeats they had suffered against Germany had they not beaten Austria-Hungary nearly as badly in the Battle of Galicia, which also ended September 11th. Now, this was a group name for a series of battles over several weeks during Austria's offensive into Russian territory. These battles ended with Russia taking 130,000 prisoners and inflicting 324,000 Austrian casualties. Yes? You heard that right, 324,000. You see, the
Austrian... Around this time, 324,000 casualties, that must be humongous at the time, right? Holy shit. I know in World War II, that's like nothing. People died 500,000 here and there. People took prisoners, 300,000, 500,000. But that's World War II, that's completely different. In World War I, that's a massive number, right? The 300,000+ casualties, holy shit. And it is surprising to see how, Germany, formerly Prussia, right, is so powerful because Prussia being military state, we know that. But Austria-Hungary being so incompetent that even the Serbia was kicking their ass at one point. And Russia getting their ass kicked every single time against Germany are easily kicking Austria-Hungary's ass. So Germany was literally the only powerful guy from their area that was actually putting up a fight. That's scary to think about, Because before I was told Austria-Hungary, they must be powerful, Germany must be powerful, so combined forces, they took on everybody in World War I. But no, Austria-Hungary sucked. So it was only Germany. That's just scary, man.
Army, under Chief of Staff Konrad von Hotzendorf, had attacked with a much smaller force than the Russians had, and the failure was actually due more to Austrian incompetence than to Russian brilliance. The Austrian army was forced to retreat 160 kilometers toward the Carpathian Mountains. Conrad's failure and humiliation were now total, and remember, there were perhaps only one or two people on Earth who bear more responsibility for the beginning of World War I and all the carnage that was to follow than Konrad von Hotzendorf. Another side note here. At one point, a bit down the road, Konrad confessed to his staff that if Archduke Franz Ferdinand was still alive, he would take the man responsible for such military disaster, Konrad himself, and have him shot. It was also this week that saw the Pact of London.
You just imagine his staff in his office is like, all right, we can take a hint and just pull out the gun. All right, let's go out.
When France, Britain, and Russia agreed that none of them would make a separate peace with Germany or Austria-Hungary. They would fight to the end. In the Western Front, it seemed like it might well be the end. The Germans had advanced toward Paris.
And that is something, isn't it? Because Germany can literally, take advantage by, one by one, doing the peace clauses with a country here and there and just crushing one or so a country. So in the end, they don't come out as complete failures, right? They realize this, Allied realize this, so they're like, okay, screw that. If there's going to be peace signing, it's going to be one together, not one by one or one country by another. Germany has to be defeated completely for what they pulled here.
For 2 weeks, and the final battle of that offensive was approaching. Now, as the Germans neared Paris, the French were finally gaining a bit of an advantage. In spite of their massive losses the past 3 weeks, they had a newly recruited and newly formed army, while the exhausted Germans had been advancing for 33 straight days.
Yeah, if Napoleonic War told us anything, that France can really, pull more and more troops out of the civilians.
Also, the Germans had followed the retreating British not to Paris, but just to the northeast and south of the River Marne, overextending their supply lines and losing the chance to take Paris, which was the major goal of their battle plan, the Schlieffen-Plan. So it was south of the Marne that the British and French prepared to do battle. The Battle of the Marne began on September 5th, 1914, a battle that the French and the British could absolutely not afford to lose. Over 2 million...
Alright, this is a real clip? This right here, this is a real clip, or is this from some kind of a movie or show? Because it feels like a real clip. Holy shit, the balls on this camera guy. He's literally at the front lines attacking the enemy and just standing there with the camera. Whatever bullet comes, man. This is just effed up, man. I would be like, holding camera and, crouching behind some kind of a cover or something. Just like, oh, I hope we are shooting some footage because, yeah, I'm not coming out.
Troops were engaged in this battle. The French used the railways to constantly take up new positions and outmaneuver the Germans. This might not have been such a big problem if the Germans had better communications, but von Moltke, the German Army Chief of Staff, was at Koblenz, over 500 kilometers away, and he practiced a system of decentralization where his generals often just did what they saw best. Moltke was also very high-strung, and by this point, he was talking to himself and writing letters to his wife where he would freak out about the amount of blood being shed and the feeling that he must personally answer to it. It's pretty amazing when you realize that the Germans had actually got this far when their generals often had no idea what the other generals were doing. During the entire Battle of the Marne, Moltke and the German...
That is just fucked up, right? I mean... Look, I've been, saying this constantly about around this time, World War I, that, certain people in power wanted the fight, right? And that is true at certain level, but it's never that simple, is it? Because sometimes it is expected out of them, seeing the, global situation and political climate, that if some opportunity arises, you have to act on it. It's just expected of them from their country and civilians. So even sometimes when they don't want to do something, they have to, like they invade and things like that, right? But obviously that's not an excuse. So Kaiser and everybody is at the fault. But even their main general, right? Moltke is, you're panicking. Because this is World War I. This level of bloodshed has never happened in the past. Not at this level. This is literally, they saw this like, holy shit, this is so bloody. So they just called it the Great War. And Moltke is like, I'm in the center of this. We are the Germany. We are the only one truly fighting from this side, while they have all the different allies, right? And technically, we are the one who started the war, right? After Arctic got shot, right? No negotiation can be reached with Serbia, so technically we just attacked France and everyone. So it was weigh heavily on him, like holy shit, all the people dying, all those Austrians dying, 300,000, everything. It's my fault somehow. Obviously, it's not that simple, but he must have thought that. How much would have that weighed on him? That's just fucked up. And he's the main military general, right? He's the one who's controlling everything. Obviously, he's, like he said, it's not a central thing. Everybody's taking their own initiative, but he's the one in command of the army.
German High Command issued no orders at all, and the last 2 days didn't even receive any. The Germans had two armies here, and the western one, under General von Bülow, had been forced to make a new north-south line facing Paris to defend against French advances, right? Von Bülow moved troops from his left to his right to counterattack, but this counterattack opened up a gap between von Bülow and the Eastern Army under von Kluck, and standing before that gap was the British Expeditionary Force, who cautiously...
Dude, I don't want to be that guy, but why would you have two generals in one line, right? One battle line. That just creates a communication error, like it happened, right? The guy just said decide to go there while he probably doesn't even know that. And there is a gap opens up that, where basically enemies can push through. Why not just have one general?
Advanced. Von Bülow's army was now cut off from von Kluck's, with communications almost non-existent. This is where the taxi legends come in. As the French surged and the Germans reinforced, the French general Joseph Gallieni did something that he quoted as, at least out of the ordinary, and indeed it was something nobody had ever done before. Gallieni requisitioned all the Paris taxicabs to shuttle reserves 50 kilometers from the city to the front. Now, the automobile was still in its infancy, and this was over 400 cars, a huge amount for the time.
I want to go to the parlor to have my hair done. I want to go to the cheese shop and eat some cheese and, smoke some cigarette. Yeah, you're not going to do that tomorrow. No taxis available. Get out of here. We need that for national security.
And most of the soldiers had never had the luxury of riding in an automobile. Two things, though. The actual impact of the...
I just realized that. But, with the trains and buses, when you go in masses, you feel like you're just transporting from place to place. Like, okay, it's a war, it's an army. But when you're going in your taxis, like there are only two or three, depending how the taxis were, there are 2 or 3 soldiers in taxi. You're like, oh yeah, the shit just got real. It's like, I have a personal car here. We are going to kick that ass. I don't know. Somehow it just boosts up like, oh yeah, we are doing something now.
This on the battle was quite modest, and the taxi drivers were paid. Their meters were running the entire time. On September 8th, the battle, and you could argue the whole war, and even the whole 20th century, hung in balance. Attack and counterattack all across the line, and it was simply a question of who would crack first. It was a night attack on the 8th, when the French captured Marche-en-Brie, that really turned the tide. When von Bülow fought back, the gap between his army and von Kluck's grew to 30 kilometers. He was outnumbered. The British were now well into the gap, and in the wee hours, von Bülow gave the order to retreat. At 9:02 a.m. on September 9th, 1914, the German forces began to withdraw. On September 9th, the Germans were driven back across the Marne, and on the 13th across the Aisne, a total retreat of 100 kilometers. And it was there, on a ridge, that the German troops dug in. And we now see one of the unsung military advances of the war, the spade in action. The Germans used it, the French did not. So the Germans could dig in, not so the French. And there's no telling how many thousands of Frenchmen were lost to the German advance because of such a simple tool. See, a man in a hole is impossible for artillery to spot, and he can't be shot by a rifle, and hand grenades would require close contact. For many Frenchmen, though, using such a defense was a dishonorable means of conducting a battle. They would soon learn that honor had no place in modern warfare.
Seriously, but it's war. I mean, I understand with the old perspective. French were living in old times, right? I mean, you can't really blame them. You can't expect people to just be, keep up with the time and be advanced like this. Holy shit, this disconnect really hurt the French here. The Germans like, winning the war any means necessary. Honorable, what the fuck about them? Fuck honorable, right? I want to win, right? That's what I want to do. They just dug in the trenches. Like, friends, like, we can't do that. Holy shit. Trench is a real powerful tool. Trench is so powerful that in World War II, right? Russians dug in their tanks, so it makes sure that, enemy Tiger tanks and Panthers don't have enough surface area to attack. Like, they can't aim at it if you just basically dig in the entire tank inside and create this kind of fortress. That is in a way trench type, right? Digging inside. It works even with the tank. Digging in basically makes sure that enemy can't shoot at you because your only head and your hands are popping out, right? It's extremely hard. And not to mention the machine guns that will be introduced soon enough, I guess. It's literally like a temporary fortress.
That modern warfare had now cost close to 1 million lives in only 5 weeks. And during the first few months of the war, an average of over 15,000 lives were lost every day. On September 14th, a shattered Moltke...
Millions in few weeks. I mean, it's hard to process that, right? 5 weeks or so. Just imagine, a month from now on, 1 million would die. And every day, when the day you're sitting at your home, obviously you're not at the warfare because you're not a soldier at the time. You're sitting at home, but knowing all this knowledge. I don't know if people had that knowledge or not. Obviously, at the time, it wasn't an internet age, so it doesn't necessarily mean people knew that. But imagine if somebody knew that at home. I don't know, some Moltke or somebody or any general just sitting there, far away from the battle line and just checking the clock. 24 hours is over. Yeah, definitely thousands have died already. Oh, look at that. Probably somebody died just now while I was talking. That is just fucked up.
He was removed from the German command. He had, in the end, found the casualties unbearable. And looking at the few orders he did issue the last 2 weeks of his command, you can see him slowly falling to pieces, but it's hard to have sympathy for him. No man on earth, not even Conrad, had done more to bring about the war than Moltke, but he proved incapable of commanding his nation's armies. 3 great offensives were over this week.
Wait a minute, I don't remember exactly, right? Moltke is the reason? Yeah, because Kaiser was at vacation, right? At the earlier times when the battle actually started, right? All the communication between Austria-Hungary and everything. Moltke fucked up, is that it? Yeah, but he probably just thought that at the time like war would happen, right? Like every time it happens. Where it won't be a global war, it will be conflict and then maybe Russia, somewhat at France, right? People will sign peace treaty or something. Some battles would happen here and there and people just call it off with Germany at being at advantage and coming out victorious. He didn't thought that they would just carry out full scale and in the end they would sign a mutual agreement then never sign a peace treaty unless Germany is completely defeated. And by then all the deaths were happening. It was weighed on him way heavily.
And much of the pattern was set for the rest of the war. I'm going to end today's episode with a quote from the historian Martin Gilbert to tell you how. Denied their triumphal entry into Paris, the German army would go on fighting on the Western Front for another 4 years, as hopeful of victory in August 1918 as they had been in August 1914. But the hopes of a month earlier, of being able to defeat France in a knockout blow and then turn all their military strength against Russia, had been dashed. The war of rapid victories had become a strategy of the past and a dream for the future.
Yeah.
Germany was going to have to fight simultaneously and with constant danger in both East and West. France was going to have to fight on French soil. Russia was going to have to regain land in the West and Austria to regain land in the East. Christmas was still 3.5 months away, but every warring state was going to have to search for new strategies and even new allies. If you have any questions about this week in the Great War, or if you want to submit some of your...
Damn, yeah, in the Christmas, everybody will just call off truce temporarily. Not officially, people in the trenches and just, hang out at the no man's land playing soccer and shit. That's just fucking surreal. That just tells you that people at the really high on command had this conflict planned out while soldiers didn't even care for any of this. I'm imagining every single soldier seeing dead bodies like, what is this for? Man, I'm fighting for my country, sure. But why are we doing this to begin with? Now, I said, in one of the World War II videos that, whenever I talk about German soldiers and Nazis and people always point out, not every one of them Nazis, and I said, they were following Nazi commands. So does it even matter if they're Nazi or not, right? I mean, soldiers don't have their free will. They have to follow chain of command. If chain of command is Nazi, they are Nazis. So, this will make it more easier. Can you imagine in World War II, allies and basically, allies and Axis, whatever, basically hang out around Christmas, calling a truce and playing football. No, that would never happen. Because of the difference of ideology. It's not just some war in World War II. I've said it many times. The World War II was battle of ideologies, right? Nazism versus communism. Whether soldier is Nazi or not, they are following Nazi orders, so they are Nazi. So yeah. But then this was something taxi to the front. That was everybody like, fuck that. Bring my taxis. Everybody can just stay home today. And they just went there. Yes, French were not prepared for the Great War because at the start they came with the bright, flamboyant colors and they got massacred, right? And even now they're like dug in trench is not honorable, but Germans are like, fuck that, this is best. Because it is literally a fort, right? Trench is like a fort. Fort has a long ass walls and you stand on top of the wall and fight your enemy. So for the battle area is advantageous because you're at the higher place and behind a wall and can shoot at enemy. It's harder for enemy to kill you, but you can kill your enemy easily. Same thing with the trenches. Trenches is dug in rather than high up. Only your head and hand and head pops out. And if you just make a really sophisticated trench barracks and things with just windows with machine guns, that's just completely different thing. Now that's just fucked up. You can mow down lots of people like they're going to do soon enough, I guess. Damn. Alright people, that was the taxi to the front, the first battle of the Marne. While that's on the Great War. If you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe, check out the reaction, there's a link in the description. Check out the cards for playlist, check out the cards, and yeah, I'll see you next time.